everyone. I'm Jonathan Covey. I contribute to community at ZetaChain, and we organize this spaces to discuss an exciting new collaboration between Google Cloud and ZetaChain. In the official press release yesterday, quote, ZetaChain collaborates with Google Cloud to activate a validator on the blockchain, supporting fully compatible universal apps that span all chains, end quote. And we have some great speakers with us to get into the details. Joining us is Richard Widman, Google Cloud's head of Web3 strategy, Dennis Vadiv, contributing to DevX at ZetaChain, and Brandon Truong, contributing to product. So thank you to our speakers for joining. And first question is for you, Richard, which is for people just learning about Google's involvement in the Web3 space. What is the Google Cloud Web3 product offering and the broader vision for the organization?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thanks for kind of the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're doing here. For just before I jump into that, I want to give like a little bit of background, and that'll hopefully set a little bit of the table as to why we're excited about working with the ZetaChain team and how it's a continuation of our mission and objectives. So, as it was said earlier, I run our global strategy here. I've been part of the founding team for what were Google Cloud's first Web3 efforts. And I think a big focus for us is a couple of things. I usually talk about it in themes. So the first theme, an area of focus for us is, we really, when we started looking at the space, and I've been in the space now for about 10 years, it was always very clear to me that the level of developer tooling was always lacking, right? It was not enterprise grade. It wasn't as good as the developer tooling that had been built up in or around the Web 2 space over the last decade or so. And so from our perspective at Google and at Google Cloud, we saw that as a real opportunity to do something that we have done and create delightful experiences around for developers in other parts of our business and bring that prowess into the Web3 space, right? So if you're a developer and you've built any mobile applications, you've used Firebase, you've built on cloud, I mean, these are all things that Google is really well known for. And so we wanted to bring those tools into the space, starting with on-chain data sets, as well as some of the managed RPC offerings that we have. And then we wanted to do it in a way that was not only enterprise grade, but was also at an affordable price. So it wasn't just the large institutions that we were going after, but it would also be sort of the newer developers who are looking to build and not rack up a ton of costs. And so, that is probably best borne out by the fact that we have currently an Ethereum RPC service that's 100 QPS free. And so the goal is to really provide the developer tooling, not just for a couple chains, but for every chain that we can. And again, I think that will lead to better access for developers, which hopefully will lead to the killer app. The second theme, for us is really around creating more Google surface area with the Web3 space. So we have something called the Web3 portal now, which is really the only hyperscaler property that's dedicated to Web3, not just the only thing that Google has, but no one else has something like this. And it really is a homepage for the Web3 community, and where you can access some of the tools I talked about earlier, but you can also see things that we're doing that really are efforts around community engagement, ecosystem building, right? So sure, RPCs and data are great, but you really can't play a role in this space if you're not interested in being on chain. And so the other, big theme for our team is to say, all right, what does it look like to participate in consensus? How do we contribute to the core developing team's objectives, whether it's helping them onboard more developers into their ecosystem, right? And that's part of what we announced with ZetaChain the other day, whether it's participating in consensus, and then overall just being a thought partner to the founders and the large ecosystem players as they think about the future of the network. And so that's the second theme. And I think the third theme is really what I consider to be more nation building, and we can always get into that another time. But it really is what are the things that Google can do, leading with cloud, but across the organization to start carrying forward the mantle of Web3. And so Some of that might look like the things you've seen us do with Google Search over the last couple of years, as well as some other Google properties that are starting to incorporate aspects of on-chain data as well as kind of on-chain experiences. So that's really kind of our whole kind of team's mission in a nutshell. And for obvious reasons, when we met with the ZetaChain team and talked a little bit about what they were focused on, it became very clear there's just a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And yeah, pretty powerful to have Google's influence advancing the crypto space. Turning to Brandon, for folks that are just learning about ZetaChain, help us understand how it got started and what ZetaChain's mission is specifically.
Yeah, one, excited to be here, and yeah, I think going back to the beginning in towards the end of 2021, so going on around 3 years now. Uh, Zeta Chain was initially started after looking at the state of crypto back then, and I think even more so now, where it is becoming so undeniably multi-chain. And when I say multi-chain, you see, you know, dozens of chains launching every year, sometimes every week now. Um, and the solutions that exist right now to go multi-chain, both as a user and as a developer, basically bubble up to a really, really poor UX in a lot of cases. And not only poor UX, but also fragmentation, like you don't even know what tools to use to navigate across the ecosystem, how to get started, and in some cases, even dangerous, where users or assets are at risk. So ZetaChain was started to basically solve that multi-chain problem. Um, and like kind of in summary, ZetaChain's mission is to build this universal blockchain that solves that problem and brings native access to pretty much any blockchain out there, both that already exist and also moving into the future, uh, and thereby making crypto as accessible and diverse as the internet itself. And I mean, we'll talk about it more in this call, but having Google as a partner is a big step towards that mission. Google is, bringing access to so many things like across cloud and all of these products um, to everyday people, and with institutions like Google Cloud helping secure and expand the reach of Zeta Chain. I think that also expands the reach of Web3 in general to everyday people, bringing those use cases more to the forefront. Um, and it starts again with this security and accessibility. So, yeah, very excited to see where this goes.
Thank you. And Richard, you touched on Google Cloud supporting a breadth of important blockchains in the space. Just clicking into the alignment with ZetaChain, how does Google Cloud's infra help expand the universal blockchain that ZetaChain is building? And what's the aim of this partnership for Web3 devs and users out there?
Yeah, so if you've been paying attention kind of to a little bit of what we've been doing in the space, right? I think the first couple of years we were looking at specific ecosystems, but within the last 12, maybe 18 months, we've kind of come to the same conclusion that the ZetaChain team had, and I think Brandon put it together really well, which is, the number of chains that are being launched, the number of protocols that are being launched on a monthly basis continues to accelerate. And so we have generally started to work very closely with companies and protocols and teams that are really trying to solve the pain points that come with an ever increasing number of new chains, right? And so, that's we made an announcement with Layer Zero a few months back. We also recently made an announcement with Wormhole. These are infrastructure companies that are really, trying to create all of the bridging and the connectivity between these ecosystems But naturally, bridging still has a lot of improvements that need to be made. And so when we spoke with Ankur and the team, and we learned a little bit about how they were relying on IBC to create something like a universal blockchain, right, where every developer essentially could become an omni-chain developer pretty easily without having to rely on a whole host of third-party tools or infrastructure services or a bridge. That was, that's really stood out for us. And so, so I think there's a couple things that we can do with that. One is, as creating a universal blockchain is challenging, and these guys are doing a lot of really innovative work. We think there's an opportunity for us, of course, to work with them to get access to the developer community of ours that is generally more crypto curious, but not necessarily all in on one chain, right? And if you read the Electric Capital reports, 3 years ago, most developers were on a single blockchain, right? And they were either, kind of gravitating towards Ethereum or Solana. And now we're seeing more multi-chain developers. And if you're paying attention to that trend, it really has an impression on you where if you think about what is the most important thing for the developer experience going forward from this point in time, it is to create more omni-chain developers and to decrease the costs and the relative learning curve of becoming an omni-chain developer. And so the ability to kind of build something once or be able to call a smart contract from other chains, those are some of the functionality that the ZetaChain team is working on. And we're excited to kind of find ways to create opportunities for developers to get access to that through our surface area. I think the other area, of course, is how do we make it really easy for any developer to kind of build generally in crypto. And so we've already kind of started working on some documentation to help increase the validator set and diversify the validator set, such that as the ZetaChain ecosystem grows, there's more people participating in the underlying consensus. There's more people who are capable of running nodes. And by the way, running a node becomes commoditized in a sense, such that it's very easy for anyone to do it, and therefore the ecosystem and the community can get the benefits of a globally diverse, distributed, and resilient node set. So I think it's kind of a couple things, right? It's bringing those developers that I think are crypto curious but aren't ready to go all in on chain, and who we talk to every day. Bringing those folks into the ZetaChain ecosystem is one thing we can do. I think the other thing that we're doing is really thinking about how do we create more omni-chain developers, not just by building awareness, but by also equipping them with the right tooling. And we'll start with validators and nodes, but obviously we can expand that and it will go beyond that. And then I think the last part is really making sure that the new blood, right, the folks who pick ZetaChain first as a default, that those projects are getting all the support that we would give any other Web3 startup that was interested in building on chain, and that includes cloud credits and other tooling and support offered not just by Google, but also by other third-party ecosystem players like the Nansons of the world and Alchemies, et cetera. So I think that kind of covers the areas that I think will play a role, and I'm very excited for. The thing I like most about these partnerships is the ability to kind of see how they mature and grow over time. And if you look back at some of the folks that we work with very early on, I think of the Aptos team, where Aptos is today versus where it was when we first met them. It's incredible to see that growth. And that growth has come largely from a lot of the work that we've done jointly to kind of build out that developer ecosystem. So I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to do that with this team and partner on that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely a long-term effort, and we're excited as well. One of the things that you just mentioned was developer experience and how important it is to build for multi-chain. And Dennis, I want to bring you into the conversation as you lead developer experience. What specifically is the ZetaChain value prop for devs, and why, if I'm a developer, would I build on it when there are so many chains out there and new ones popping up every few weeks, it seems?
I think the fact that there are so many chains and new chains appear every couple of months is exactly why you should build on ZetaChain, because it's very difficult to make this decision. Like, where do you deploy an app, right? You have an idea, you want to build it, you decided you're going to implement it on EVM chain, but which one, right? It is becoming more difficult to answer this question, but with ZetaChain, you kind of don't have to make this decision. You just deploy it once, and you're automatically connected to all these EVM chains, and users who want to just interact with your app can do so from whichever chain they're currently on. And this is really powerful for developers as well as users, because they have to navigate this blockchain landscape, and bridging tokens for gas, and switching wallets, and figuring out which token you need to buy which picture or something, or it is rather challenging, right? So the more we can provide tools for developers to streamline that and make it just a one-click experience, the better. And I think we're on our way to do that. For example, operations like cross-chain swaps are so much easier when it's just handled by a single universal app on ZetaChain that takes input from one chain and propagates this transaction to another chain.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, and developers building universal apps on ZetaChain now have a new level of confidence because Google Cloud is validating and helping secure ZetaChain. And curious your perspective there, and maybe you could share high level for new people to Web3, like what does it mean that Google Cloud is running a validator on ZetaChain, and how does that help build developer confidence?
Yeah, in simple terms, a blockchain is a database, and it's distributed, and it's operated by different entities known as validators. And the more validators you have, generally, the better, even though this is not the most important criteria. But still, you want to have a diverse validator set. You want different entities to secure the network, and upgrade the software, and participate in governance. And what Google allows is it essentially lowers the barrier to entry, as Rich said. Um, the easier it is to set up a validator, the more people are going to be doing that, experimenting, because validation is basically two things. I mean, I know I'm simplifying, but it's like DevOps and marketing, and um, DevOps are generally costs, right? And if you can make these costs lower and make it uh, more easy for people to join, the better. So, but I just wanted to say that aside from validation, this is actually important also for applications, because I've been talking to developers, and many of them actually need to run nodes themselves, right? They have this technical requirement for their applications, for reliability, for whatever reason, right? They need to run nodes, and running it on Google's infrastructure is cost effective and generally easier than doing it on bare metal, for example. So this is a great improvement, quality of life improvement for developers who need to run their own nodes.
Nice, yeah, and it's also worth mentioning ZetaChain's commitment around driving adoption of Google Cloud infrastructure. One of the things in the press release is that ZetaChain Foundation announced a delegation incentive of 1 million Zeta for validators running on the Google Cloud platform. Brandon, you want to catch us up on that program and how people can get involved?
Yeah, definitely. So as Dennis was mentioning, like diversity in a validator set is super important for the health of Zeta Chain's network or any of these decentralized networks. And what infrastructure a validator set is live on is a big factor in that. So one effort we're trying to push with the delegation program is 5 eligible validators will receive part of this 1 million Zeta pool of delegation to help them kick off and get started. So we really want to encourage people to get their hands dirty, like just dig in and deploy on Google Cloud. And um, as Rich mentioned, they're working on docs that actually make this very easy. So maybe you won't even get your hands that dirty, but you'll be able to go live on Google Cloud. And after passing some eligibility checks, we'll delegate Zeta to your validator so you can cover some of the costs from rewards and also start just kind of bootstrapping your validator in the ZetaChain ecosystem. So that's really excited, and we're excited to see what sort of infrastructure providers or just developers or people interested start to get involved in the validator side of ZetaChain.
Very cool. And you mentioned there'll be some documentation coming out soon. Richard, anything you want to share on the Google Cloud Validator Toolkit and the process of getting set up and using the platform?
Yeah, so I think this will be like the first area where, we try to add and again decrease that friction. So the documentation we're coming out with is and actually I think I just sent it to you guys this morning, so probably could put it on the GitHub now. But the documentation will give folks a walkthrough, whether you're a longtime GCP user or you're new to cloud. The idea is we want to make it very, very easy to run these validators. And over time, this motion starts with documentation and a how-to, and then eventually we'll move to like a single click to deploy solution that will be hosted on the Web3 portal, which I talked about a little bit earlier. So that way, any developer who comes in, some folks like to kind of read the docs and roll their own and kind of like really understand it. But others who are, maybe want it to be a little bit more lightweight and have used a cloud marketplace before will prefer the single click solution. And so that's the other side of where we'll go from here. Is we'll start with documentation. We're going to learn a little bit along the way around the network topography and running these nodes, and then over time the goal is to create for the developer community, particularly as it's scaling, something that is single click to deploy and even easier for folks to use.
Thanks, Richard. And so you mentioned earlier there's a lot of different facets to the collaboration. Another one is the Google Cloud Startup Foundation and some of the resources that will be available to devs building on ZetaChain. What is the program, and what's kind of the TLDR on the resources available to the ecosystem?
Yeah, so if you're on the Web3 portal, you see there's a button that says startups. We have had for a couple years a specific Web3 startup program for any builder that's building an on-chain company, whether you're a protocol, whether you're building a dApp. And the idea is we wanted to bring and really level up the generic startup programs that most people are familiar with on the cloud side, right? So if you've ever you built a startup, but you could sometimes get cloud credits, and that's nice. But we realized that there were a number of developer tools that weren't captured by those programs. So we came out with a Web3 specific talk track or a Web3 specific startup track. And the idea is you get about, I think it's 200K in credits over 2 years for Web3 startups. And then you also get, by virtue of being in the program, access to a token gated Discord, which is sort of the entire Google Cloud startup community there. It's where our product teams are milling around, sharing updates and private previews and giving people sort of beta access to the things that we're working on. It's also where we let folks know where we're going to be and what conferences we're going to be at, get you invited to certain events, oftentimes that we're hosting in partnership with some of the other leading protocols or VCs. And then there's a number of partners, I think I alluded to this in the beginning, which include folks like Nansen and ThirdWeb and Alchemy, who by virtue of being in our program, offer a discount to their services. And then in addition to that, we also have a number of relationships with foundations. So And the idea is, any company that is now in the ZetaChain ecosystem who's just starting out and is looking to get access to those credits and be part of that community by virtue of this partnership can now do so. And so we're excited to, again, kind of bring in a new cohort of folks that are building, I think, something that will not just be valuable for the, kind of the ZetaChain ecosystem specifically, but perhaps for the omni-chain ecosystem, of which we have a lot of those in our wheelhouse. So we're excited about that.
Excellent. Yeah, number of benefits here in the collaboration for ZetaChain security, of course, and then developers building startups and these next-gen universal apps. So wrapping up here, just looking forward within what you guys can share about roadmap highlights or things that you're excited about broadly in the space. Would love to hear from each of you. Maybe we'll stick with you, Richard. What's on the horizon at Google Cloud?
Yeah, so I think without spilling the beans, and we've been talking to Ankur and team about this, but I do think at a very high level there are a couple things we're really excited about. So one is there is going to be a really interesting convergence between some of the AI tools that we're working on and going to market with, and the on-chain ecosystem and the on-chain developer ecosystem. One of the things that I see as a really natural opportunity to kind of really create some value here for the developer community is going back to that, the difficulties of moving or building an application on one chain and shifting it to another protocol. It would be really interesting to see how generative models can help serve as a co-pilot or a code assist, specifically in the on-chain environment. I think there's a lot of folks that are doing this, like in the traditional developer environments, right? And Replit got something like this. And I know we have something that's live as well. But I think there is really no greater pain point than that a developer faces who's built something on Ethereum and then wants to also build it on something like a Solana or on the Move chains or whatever. And so being able to kind of offer some of the out of the box standardized smart contract templates via an LLM model that you can interact with and sort of ask questions to, and make natural language sort of requests of, and then it can create that smart contract for you. I think that's really what we're looking forward to, and I think it's an area of exploration that we're going to continue to kind of go down, and obviously with the ZetaChain folks and the kind of the mission alignment around the universal blockchain, I think it'll be very interesting next year for anybody who is trying to turn developers into omni-chain developers. And I'll leave it at that.
Love it. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, Dennis, would love your comments on that as it relates to intersection of AI and the need for cross-chain composability. And then, what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I think AI for blockchain is going to be big, especially in the area of trying to figure out what a user wants to do and then doing it as an agent on chain. And for that, of course, you would have to connect all these blockchains and allow these agents to actually move assets and data between chains in most optimal streamlined way possible. So that's what we're working on. And but specifically when it comes to ZetaChain, I'm very excited about the capabilities of moving NFTs between chains and custom ERC20s without whitelisting, and the upcoming router contract that will essentially be a drop-in replacement, not replacement, but kind of a similar thing to other messaging solutions, but this time powered by ZetaChain. So I'm super excited about these projects, and yeah, hoping to bring them into ready-to-use templates pretty soon.
Thanks, Dennis. And yeah, Brandon, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I'll just echo some of what we've already said, but yeah, I mean, I think in the near future, more docs, more tooling, and I think as ZetaChain starts to add more support for new chains like say Solana and Ton and IBC, working with a partner like GCP, who has this multi-chain support and access to data, will make things really, really easy to get started, whether you're a validator looking to get involved with the network or building a new universal app for end users. Either way, it should be super simple and ideally one command so you can focus on anything, be it the utility of your app or the security of your infrastructure, etc. Um, and yeah, I think AI agents and like coding tools are definitely top of mind. And I think one other thing I'll add on is like with some more regulatory clarity on things like say stable coins and just general access to crypto. I think this whole multi-chain conversation and accessibility is gonna become more and more important for an everyday person. So making sure that core security and infrastructure is there for developers and users is gonna be really key for being ready for this new wave of interest and also just utility for people.
Great. Thanks, guys, for your insights. Yeah, I want to thank the speakers and everyone for tuning in to review the ZetaChain Google Cloud collaboration. We'll share more updates on documentation, the 1 million Zeta delegation program for Zeta validators running on the Google Cloud platform, and a whole lot more development and collaborations to come. So, yeah, thanks to our speakers and everyone for tuning in.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.